I didn't even realize I was the last one in the office. The hum of fluorescent lights and the soft tapping of my keyboard were the only things keeping me company that night. I was so deep into formatting a bloated financial report for a client I'd never even met that I didn't notice the lights dim. Didn't notice the silence stretch. Didn't even notice when the cleaning crew left. If there's one thing corporate life taught me, it's how to tune out my own exhaustion. It was supposed to be just a few hours of quiet time to get ahead. My plan was to stay until 8 p.m., catch up on all the things I couldn't finish because of back-to-back meetings and quick favors Trent kept handing me all week. Trent, my manager, had a talent for disappearing whenever real work showed up. "Can you just take this one on too, Nadia? You're so fast with these reports," he'd say, every time. And like a fool trying to prove herself, I said yes. Again. And again. Until I realized I had a week's worth of tasks to cram into one long night. I glanced at the time on my screen. 10:47 p.m. Not ideal, but manageable. I stood up, stretched, and started packing. My shoulders ached from sitting too long, and my eyes felt like sandpaper. As I made my way to the exit, I felt a sudden chill, half from the overworked air conditioning, half from the eerie quiet. Our floor usually echoed with idle chat, phone calls, and the occasional microwave beep. But now, it felt abandoned. I reached the main glass doors and tugged. Locked. I blinked and tried again. Still locked. No big deal, I thought. Maybe the doors just needed a badge swipe. I pulled mine out and tapped the reader. Red light. Again. Red. I frowned and tried the side door near the meeting rooms. Then the back exit near the elevator. Then the emergency stairwell. All sealed. Every single one. My phone had a couple of bars, but no notifications. I tried calling building security, but the line rang and rang before going to voicemail. And that's when I remembered Peter, our night security guy, was off this week. Some fishing trip he'd been talking about for months. The temporary replacement clearly wasn't doing much checking. Suddenly, I was hit by the absurdity of it all. I had been so focused on trying to prove my worth that I literally got locked inside my job. I should have panicked. Instead, I sighed. Then laughed. There was no point in freaking out. No one was coming to get me until at least 6 a.m., when the automated security system reset. The entire building was basically on a corporate timer. And I was now just another forgotten cog trapped inside it. So I made my way back to my desk, stopped by the break room, and found my half-eaten pad thai from lunch. I reheated it, brewed myself the last cup of stale office coffee, and stared out the window for a while. City lights blinked below. Quiet. Peaceful. Almost beautiful. That's when I realized something. This was the first time in weeks that I didn't have to answer messages every 5 minutes. No interruptions. No fake emergencies. No Trent pinging me on Slack with quick asks. Just me, my work, and a weird, empty office that I had all to myself. I could finish the reports. Knock out the client decks. Maybe even organize that monster spreadsheet no one else wanted to touch. So I sat down, cracked my knuckles, and got back to it. One night. One office. One woman's ridiculous attempt to finish a week's worth of work while literally locked inside her job. And that's just how it began. The first hour was surprisingly productive. Once I made peace with the fact that I was spending the night here, I settled into a rhythm I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. I cleaned up the overdue slide deck Trent had half finished and passed off to me with zero formatting. I restructured it, rewrote the objectives to make actual sense, added a few smart visuals, and realized it was better than anything he'd ever presented on his own. The silence of the office felt almost sacred. No Slack pop-ups. No urgent calendar invites. No fake small talk from teammates who only asked how I was doing to pivot into a request. Just the soft hum of the HVAC, the occasional creak of a settling ceiling tile, and the faint buzz of a vending machine humming somewhere in the distance. Around midnight, I turned on the small desk lamp near the printer station and left the rest of the lights dim. It felt cozy. Safe, in a strange way. Like I had stepped outside time. I pulled up the huge spreadsheet that had haunted me all week. Our client, a logistics company, had dozens of mismatched invoices that didn't align with the financials we'd provided. I'd pointed out the discrepancies 2 weeks ago. Trent told me not to worry, they'll figure it out. They didn't. And guess who had to fix it? By 1:45 a.m., I had mapped the entire thing out, matched each line item, color-coded the payment issues, and added a final tab that summarized every irregularity in plain English. I even included visual callouts and pivot charts for easy explanation. It was beautiful. My kind of beautiful, anyway. And yet, beneath that strange productivity high, something gnawed at me. Why was I doing this? Why was I bending over backward to perfect reports that would be emailed under someone else's name? Why was I still proving myself in a place that had long ago stopped seeing me? I opened my inbox, just out of reflex, and scrolled through the latest team thread. There it was, "Thanks for handling this, Trent." "Looks great," from one of the senior managers, replying to the deck I had literally just rebuilt from the ground up. My name wasn't even mentioned. Of course it wasn't. I stared at that email for a while. My food had gone cold again, untouched on the desk. I wasn't even hungry. Just disappointed. Tired in a way no sleep could fix. It wasn't just about being overworked anymore. It was about being invisible. And yet, somewhere between the caffeine crash and spreadsheet mania, I found clarity. If they wouldn't see me, I'd make sure someone else would. I had already done a week's worth of work in a night. I had evidence, documentation, timestamps, client records, everything. Maybe I wasn't ready to quit tomorrow. But I sure as hell wasn't going to sit here and rot while people like Trent floated on credit for things they didn't do. By 3 a.m., I had started drafting an outline of every project I had led in the last year. Quietly. Efficiently. Without acknowledgement. I backed up all my work to a personal drive, labeled everything, and even took screenshots of some Slack conversations where I'd been subtly erased from credit. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to make a plan. Outside the window, the city started to shift from deep night to pre-dawn calm. The kind of quiet where nothing moved but trash trucks and the occasional early jogger. Inside, the air felt warmer. Still sterile, still artificial, but not suffocating. I had never felt so alone in a building full of desks, and so free. And the craziest part? I was still going. By 4:15 a.m., I had lost track of how many tasks I'd completed. The financial discrepancies? Cleaned up and reconciled. The presentation Trent had procrastinated on? Fully built, complete with speaker notes and action items. Even the internal team calendar, normally a hot mess of overlapping deadlines, had been reorganized and color-coded by urgency. I was running on cold coffee, a sense of spite-fueled purpose, and maybe a little delirium. But I wasn't just working, I was reclaiming. Every click, every email, every revised chart was a quiet rebellion against the way I'd been undervalued. For the first time in months, I felt like I was doing this for me, not because someone else needed me to put out another fire. I took a break around 5 a.m. and wandered through the office with my shoes off. It was eerily quiet, with shadows stretching long across the cubicles. The place looked different in the early morning light, less corporate, less cold. More like a blank canvas than a cage. I walked into the small conference room where I'd once been invited to observe a strategy meeting, only to realize halfway through that my ideas were being pitched by someone else who had just reworded them. I remember sitting in the corner that day, too stunned to speak. Tonight, I sat at the head of the table. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming a space that had shut me out without ever saying it out loud. Back at my desk, I started drafting something I never thought I'd have the nerve to write, a proposal for a new role. Not just for a promotion, though God knows I deserved it, but a restructuring of how our department ran. A system that gave proper credit, delegated tasks clearly, and held Trent and others like him accountable for what they actually did, or didn't do. I laid it all out. Data. Gaps in workflow. Specific examples. I even included anonymous feedback I'd gathered from coworkers over the past year, comments they'd whispered to me in the break room but were too afraid to share in meetings. I didn't name names, but the patterns were obvious. When I finished, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The building stirred to life just after 6 a.m. The elevator dinged on the far end of the hallway. A sleepy-looking janitor wheeled in a mop bucket and paused when he saw me still sitting there, hunched over a glowing screen. "You here all night?" he asked. I nodded, smiling faintly. Accidentally locked in. He let out a low whistle. "That's rough." "Not as rough as you'd think," I replied. By the time the first few employees drifted in around 7, I had already showered in the building gym, changed into a backup sweater I'd forgotten was in my desk drawer, and printed out the entire proposal, neatly bound, color-coded tabs and all. Trent arrived at 8:27, coffee in hand, looking smug as usual. He passed my desk without even glancing, then did a double take when he saw the proposal waiting on his chair. "What's this?" he asked. I stood, stretched, and looked him in the eye. "Something I put together last night," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I think it'll interest the board more than you." He opened the first page. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm in seconds. And I walked out, straight to HR, with my backup files, my receipts, and the confidence of someone who had turned a night of silence into a declaration. When I walked into the HR office that morning, I was ready. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't nervous. I felt like someone who had finally found the off switch for fear and the on switch for self-worth. Elaine from HR raised an eyebrow when she saw me at the door. She was sipping her usual green smoothie, already half bored before the day even started. I handed her a flash drive and a printed copy of the proposal. "You'll want to read this," I said. She glanced at the cover, Department Workflow Audit and Proposal, authored by Nadia Tran. Her expression changed. She gestured for me to sit down. I told her everything. Calmly, professionally. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I just presented facts, projects assigned, work completed, Slack logs, email threads, and timelines that clearly outlined how Trent had been taking credit for work he didn't do. I showed her the deck that had landed him praise the week before, complete with metadata showing I was the one who created and revised every slide. I showed her timestamps, Jira tickets, and even screenshots of him forwarding my files with his name copy-pasted into the headers. I didn't need to embellish. The proof was overwhelming. Elaine took notes silently, her smoothie untouched. For once, she didn't interrupt. "I stayed overnight by accident," I said. "But I used the time. I think you'll find this proposal outlines more than just Trent's behavior. It addresses structural issues in how our team operates. And ways to fix them." She blinked. "You did all this in one night?" "Most of it, yeah. I just needed time. And silence. And no one standing over my shoulder asking me to fix things quietly." She flipped through the first few pages, stopping at a section labeled Discrepancy Matrix, Credit versus Contributor. There were 3 columns. Project, Reported Owner, and Actual Contributor. It wasn't a full list, just 10 carefully chosen examples. Each one told a story in 2 lines. Trent's name dominated the second column. Mine filled the third. Elaine looked up. "What do you want from this?" It was the first time someone had asked me that question in months, maybe years. I want recognition, I said. I want structure. I want transparency. And I want to stop working in a place where invisibility is the reward for competence. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll escalate this, she said. Immediately. I walked out of the HR office with something I hadn't felt in a long time, momentum. Back at my desk, Trent was pacing. I could feel the heat of his irritation before I even reached my chair. He spun around to face me, eyebrows raised. What the hell is this, Nadia? You read it? He looked like he wanted to scream, but we were in an open office and his reputation depended on being the cool boss. You're throwing me under the bus. No, I said evenly. I'm just pulling the bus out of the garage. What happens next is up to you. You blindsided me. I looked him dead in the eye. I've been sidelined for 2 years. You'll survive a little honesty. He opened his mouth to reply but stopped when Elaine walked onto the floor, followed by 2 senior managers. They didn't say anything. Just nodded toward the glass meeting room. Trent's face drained of color. They wanted a conversation. Now. He grabbed his laptop and walked stiffly to the room. The door closed behind them. I sat down, opened my inbox, and refreshed the page. Nothing yet. But it was only a matter of time. And for the first time in years, I wasn't dreading what might come. I was ready for it. By noon, the ripple effects had already begun. Trent never returned to his desk. I heard murmurs through the office, whispers bouncing from cubicle to cubicle. People noticed the meeting. They noticed Elaine's serious face. They noticed when the head of our division showed up, walked straight into that glass room, and closed the blinds. At 12:17 p.m., an internal email hit our inboxes. Just a generic update, team restructure in progress, more details to come. But we all knew what it meant. I sat at my desk, calm, almost detached, watching a system try to correct itself after years of imbalance. Trent's chair sat empty. His coffee was still warm. It wasn't just about him, though. After everything, this wasn't really a story about revenge. It was a story about waking up. About realizing that sometimes the only thing keeping you stuck is the belief that you have to keep proving your worth to people who never planned on recognizing it. I didn't tell anyone I'd been locked in the building overnight. It almost felt sacred, my night of clarity, of quiet defiance, of rebuilding my narrative in the dark. 2 days later, I was called into another meeting, this one with Elaine and a member of the executive leadership team. They offered me a formal promotion. Senior operations lead, with a 25% raise and full project ownership. But more than that, they acknowledged the gap. The blind spot they had allowed to fester in our team. Elaine told me HR had begun a broader audit, using my proposal as a framework. They didn't just listen. They moved. I accepted, but on one condition, that I be allowed to build a team, hand-picked. People who, like me, had done quiet heavy lifting for far too long. People whose brilliance was buried under mediocre managers and louder voices. And they said yes. 3 weeks later, Trent's desk was cleared. His name erased from the company org chart. He didn't even say goodbye. But I didn't need him to. Because the work I'd done that night, the reports, the strategy, the proposal, wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who's ever stayed late fixing someone else's mess. For every employee told to be a team player while others take credit. For every person who ever doubted if they were being unreasonable for wanting recognition. That night, I was locked in. But now? Now I hold the keys. Sometimes I still walk past the break room late in the evening, long after most people have gone home. I pause by the glass doors, remembering the red light, the silence, the surreal realization that I was alone. And I smile. Because that night I wasn't trapped. I was just waking up.